Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about backend developers and frontend developers. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, a backend developer said to me that frontend development is tedious and has less technical value. What do you think? Well, I would say that I mean, if you feel that front-end development is tedious, then be my guest. I mean, I'm not gonna. You're of course entitled to your own opinion. Whether or not it has less technical value, I think that is a gross oversimplification of what it's about. Honestly, if you're telling me that there is a difference between the technical understanding, at least normally, between front-end developers and the work that they do and the requirements on those tech skills and a back-end developer. Yes, I would agree with that. That's a fairly accurate statement. Usually, the back-end developers have a higher level of understanding of the traditional things that you find in computer science and so forth than the front-end developers. That's not always true, but the norm definitely. Whether or not it has more value, though, I'm not so sure about, because I've never seen a backend developer who was able to ship a product that has a UI of some sort and felt that the way to do that is to just expose a bunch of HTTP endpoints to the customer. Because I've had a similar argument with a designer once upon a time, where he came up to me basically and explained to me in great detail why what he does is more advanced and it's much harder than what I do as the person who's just building the thing that he has to create. Because as he said to me, Frederick, I have to start from nothing. There's nothing, and then I have to imagine what's going to be, how it's going to work, and visualize all of that so that you can then implement it. And that's much harder than you have my work to use as a reference to build a thing. And at the time, I thought about that for a moment, and then I replied and I said, well, I'm not going to deny that what you're doing is very valuable. Whether or not it's more valuable than what I do, I find hard to. I feel that that's a little bit presumptuous to say that that's the case, because let me just phrase it like this: if you give me a drawing of a box and you tell me that the way it's going to work is that if you put something in that box, it's going to duplicate it. Who has the harder job? You who drew the box, or me who's going to have to make it duplicate the thing that you put in the box? You see, it's actually quite easy and a lot more effective in terms of time to make something visual, because you have no physical limitations of what you can do. Your imagination is the limit. You can literally sit right now and draw anything, literally anything, and I have to make it work. And you have no idea what is required in order to make that work. And if you ever thought that there was a question of which of the tasks is more difficult in terms of time and investment required, then and I just swirled my chair over and I pointed to the software team. There's 5 of us and 1 of you, and you work with multiple teams. Do you know why? Because the time it takes you to produce an artboard is a fraction of the time it takes us to build the thing. So sure, you are absolutely right. Your work is very valuable, but I don't think we should get into a game of who is the most important player, because it depends on what we're doing, what perspective are we looking at. And I would say the same thing about front-end development and back-end development. If you are an extremely talented front-end developer and you work for, say, an agency or a company that does a lot of demos or things like that, also that you're going to be the rock star in that group. Same thing as you work at a traditional corporate company where they want to revitalize their UI, and like they have a shitty product with a lot of bad UI experiences, all of a sudden you're going to be I promise you're going to be in the lounge position, because the values and the focus of the company is on improving this area. Therefore, your skills are definitely the thing that's going to be the top priority, or be the thing that is going to bring like a ton and ton of tons and tons of value. That doesn't mean that the thing that the backend developer is doing is like not important. It's, of course it's fucking important. If you have to pick between having just a UI and a working application, most companies will see a value in having the backend, or like having the working system do whatever it's supposed to be doing. But to me it's kind of like arguing that it's better to have a brain or a heart. Like that there's one of these two things that is more useful. Well, yeah, sure, under extreme circumstances you could probably make do with one or the other, but let's admit that it's probably the norm that you're going to need both, and you need both in order to actually have any value. Because if you just have a backend system, when there's a UI required, your product isn't finished. It's like having half a car, it's not done. And the same thing goes on the other side. If you have just a UI, and unless it really is just a static website, and then there's no functionality, it's not going to do anything. So it's as I said, for me it's the car analogy. Saying that the most important part of the car is the engine is, I feel yeah, sure, it's a sort of fair assessment depending on how you look at it. But if you exclude all the other stuff, nobody's going to buy the fucking thing. So what I want you to take away from this is that I don't think that it's fair to say that that front-end development is less valuable than back-end development. I'm very sorry to say that this is a very common viewpoint for a lot of back-end developers, and I can never get them to the point where it seems, at the very least, like the most like I don't know, because I usually get to talk to rational people, and after a little bit of talking back and forth, we realize, both of us, that what we're saying is that sure, if push comes to shove, there's a lot of situations where the back-end work is more important than the front-end work. But the same thing can be said in the reverse, depending on circumstances. But on the whole, for the most like the common case is that both of these things are required, because without both of them there's no value in anything, and this entire discussion is pointless, because it's going to be between two unemployed developers. Have a great day.